Hi, everybody. This is Anoop, and we are on the third episode of Second Mind Medicine. So let me know if the audio and video is coming through okay. I'll wait for some people to log on here. Today we'll be talking about what we're calling multi-directional healing. So just send some messages, say hello, let me know that the audio and video is coming through. I can see people are jumping on. We will talk about maybe one or two of the questions that we got last time. We'll start with that after a short meditation. Okay, great. All right, looks like the message is coming through. Anna, thank you. Looks like the sound is coming through. Video is okay. Great. Okay, Maria from Portugal. Hello. All right, Selena, Cindy. Great. All right. We got California, Portugal, and a few other places. South Africa. Fantastic. All right, so as people jump in here, let's just take a few moments. And let's just go through these 5 bodies that we talked about last time. So, of course, the most apparent layer is the physical structure, what we call the physical body. So you can feel your physical body. You can rub the fingers together, rub the hands together, maybe feel your feet on the ground. Maybe you're holding your phone. You can feel, recognize, be aware of the perceptions that we call the physical body. The fifth layer of a human being. So feel that intimacy with the physical structure, with the perceptions, with the sensations, with the density, the feeling of solidness, the physicalized version of you. And then any thoughts, any feelings, distinct emotions, questions, doubts. This is the mental body. If you look in the physical body for the mental body, it can't be found. So note the experiential difference of physicality and mentality. The majority of medicine today, of modern medicine, focuses on the fifth layer, the physicalized structure. With a little bit of knowledge about the mental body. And now using awareness, shift the range of attention, dropping off the physical layer and dropping off the layer of thoughts and distinct emotions. And we move into what might be a hazier domain where boundaries are not so distinct. Hazier and just as real or more real, depending on how we see it. From the perspective of the first mind, the energetic body is hazy, unclear, not definable. From the perspective of the second mind, the energetic body is the most clear of the outer three layers, is the most distinct, and the most real. May feel like warmth, like a glow, like subtle movement, like colored lights, like buzzing. Could be any of these or more. Any and all of these are variations on energy. And now moving even more subtly from the third to the second layer, the informational body, which is the subtler aspect of the energetic body, or the grosser aspect of consciousness. Very few words here. The crystallizing of transpersonal consciousness, as it were. And then leaving all notion, concept, sensation of the other. or even of feeling a particular way, of feeling bliss or feeling some sensation. Allowing awareness to leave this also. The first body, consciousness. And so we move from consciousness into the informational, energetic thoughts. Distinct thoughts begin appearing, distinct emotions, and among the sensations, the physicalized structure. All right. So somebody says, does the emotional body belong to mental or to energy? So remember what we're talking about in this diagram. Let's see. I'm going to try to share this screen. Let's see if this works. Okay. Let me know if you can see that screen. Try to put a diagram up here. And so what we're talking about is emotions, very distinct emotions I'm placing and categorizing in the mental body, right? Now, of course, what the whole diagram is suggesting, right? By the way, if you want to take a look at this, let me try to find the post here. All right. You can look at this diagram also through this link. But what this is suggesting is that this consciousness is differentiating and appearing and crystallizing and becoming more dense through these layers, right? So even though in this layer, in the mental layer, I'm placing distinct emotions, we can't say that emotions are nowhere else. In fact, the very idea is that emotions show up as the physical structure too, right? As maybe tightness in the back, or as a gastric ulcer, or in many ways. So I'm localizing it. I'm putting the locus of emotion in the mental body here. But of course, it has energetic components, informational components, and physical components, right? So if we're going to create a distinct body called the emotional body, it would span some of these. What I'm trying to do here is isolate or highlight each of these in particular, especially the energetic body, and bring together all kinds of energy there, right? Whether it's the kinds of energy we can measure, or whether it's the kinds that are subjective, that we call subjective or experiential. So the emotional body would traverse these. Nirav, yes, we can see. Thank you. Great. All right. So let's look at another question from last time. Somebody asked, is consciousness an energy or an experience? Right? So it's both, and it's more than that. Right? So consciousness, of course, as the energetic body, we experience it as energy. Right? It's been documented in cultures around the world. As the mental body, we experience it as thoughts and emotions, as physical body, as physicality. So what we're calling consciousness has expression as all of these, right? As both energy and in general as experience at different levels of experience. So energy is one kind of experience. Mentality is one kind of experience, and so on. So yes, it's experience. Yes, it's energy. And consciousness is also something more. And that's why in this diagram, it is the first body. It is the original body, so to speak, the body of origin, right? From which all of these appear. And the reason we say that that in a way is beyond experience is because for us to register an experience, there's always some kind of threshold, right? So, for example, if I rub the top of my palm here, then there is some kind of experience, and I know it's there, and so therefore I can say that, hey, wait, I'm having a distinct experience. Now, if that's done much more gently, for example, or if it's done while I'm sleepy, then maybe it doesn't register, right? So experience is relative to the degree of sensitivity, right? The more sensitive an instrument is, the more it can pick up something, some stimulus that it might call an experience. So consciousness, we would not necessarily say is an experience in that sense. Information is an experience, energy, mentality, body. And in these senses, we can say we experience consciousness. We can say we feel something, it feels subtle, there's something here. Even those things that we can name and we can say, well, there is something that I am experiencing. There's still that kind of split that I am experiencing something. And so that place in which it is no longer a distinct I that is experiencing something, that is what we say is something that is beyond experience in the traditional sense, right? That is what we might consider the second mind proper, right? As opposed to the range of the second mind itself is where this subject and object merge, right? So in that sense, the second mind, yes, for casual purposes, for understanding purposes, we can say, yes, this consciousness is an experience because we can feel some kind of presence here. And at the same time, we have to take that almost like a trail of breadcrumbs and trace that experience. Where is this experience coming from, right? And at the heart of that, what we call consciousness, is not an experience in that sense. It is simply identity. It is what we are. And it is what we are that then goes out and experiences. All right. So Anna says the second mind is me. Exactly. Right. So what does me and I refer to? It refers to, in its essential nature, it refers to what we are. Right. Nothing more can be said about that. It is what we are fundamentally. And that can then become aware of what we are as information, energy, mentality, physicality, and so on. All right. So then somebody asked a very practical question. How will this help with COVID? And this gets into our topic today about multi-directional healing. So let's see. Let me stop this sharing for now and get back here so I can see the main screen. Okay. So the entire framework and the purpose of second mind medicine is to restructure or have a way of restructuring healthcare around a more comprehensive vision, right? The idea here isn't about prescribing a particular treatment, right? It's about saying, how can we raise the level of the entire healthcare system? How can we change the way we see things? How can we see the human being more completely? And yes, as a result of that, also tap into all of the kind of healing modalities that are there around the world. All right, so let's get into, in answering this question, let's get into a little bit more about this, about healing. So the way we see healing in this model is that healing is a kind of disintegration, right? So we talked about before, if there's a cut in the skin, right? What happens when there's a cut in the skin? The integrity of the skin is compromised, right? What we call the epithelium, the cells that are bound together, right? That are adjacent to each other, that adjacent nature or that integrated nature is disrupted. There's a disruption there. And that's a disintegration. And that's what we call injury, or in this case, a disease, right? And so what is healing in that case? Healing is, of course, becoming whole. It is the reintegration of the skin. All right, let's take another example. Let's say congestive heart failure, right? Congestive heart failure, or commonly called CHF, is a problem with the organ of the heart, and it takes different forms. Two forms are what we call a problem with pumping, which is called systolic heart failure. This is when the heart cannot pump out enough blood, right? It doesn't pump it out well enough for the blood to go out and circulate around. Another is called diastolic heart failure, which is a problem with filling. So the heart doesn't relax appropriately or receive blood appropriately from the circulatory system, and therefore it has a problem with filling. So these are two kinds of congestive heart failure. Now, both of this, again, can be seen as a problem with integration. So the integrative function of this heart is to receive and send, right? This is what the heart does. It receives blood and sends blood out, receives and sends, right? Relaxes, which is when it receives, and it contracts, which is when it sends, like a pump. Now, if that's the case, what we're talking about for that to function properly is there has to be some kind of integration between these two functions. And when either of these goes out of balance, as it does when there's a problem in systolic failure or in diastolic failure, then this is what we call broadly congestive heart failure, right? So whether we're talking about a problem in the skin, a disintegration of the skin, or a problem with the integrated functioning of the heart, we can look at healing, which is returning to the whole, as this idea of restoring reintegration or wholeness to disintegration. All right, so this is the way we're looking at healing in terms of integration and disintegration in second mind medicine. So then when we talk about that, we can talk about healing at multiple levels, right? The most common way we talk about healing in our society is we talk about healing a particular part, right? So the skin has a laceration, there's a disintegration, we want to bring it back together, the skin heals, or the skin comes back together, it reintegrates, and we have healing. That is the healing of a part. And for the most part in our society, we talk about healing in terms of parts, right? So if there's, like I said, a cut, even if there's congestive heart failure, ideally, we would like that pumping function and the relaxing function to come back. If there's kidney failure, the kidney's not filtering the blood as well, we would like that function to come back, to be integrated once more. We talk about this kinds of partial healing. Now, the whole idea here is that we want to heal at the level of the whole human being. Why is that? Because there is much more to this human being than this layer of the physical structure. Right now, going back to this diagram, the understanding of healing, our understanding of how the body heals, and the intelligence that we have regarding healing resides primarily here in the mental body, right? What is the mental body? It is our thoughts, it's our ideas, right? So our understanding of healing, our understanding of medicine, all of this lives in the mental body right here. But the body's intelligence itself is much more than this, right? Of course, the physical body has its own intelligence, right? The cells have their own intelligence. We didn't teach our cells how to do the innumerable functions that they do, how to drink, how to eat, how to excrete, how to metabolize, how to move around. We didn't teach the cells this. That knowledge doesn't come from the mental body, right? We didn't teach the heart to pump, the arteries to pump, the blood to circulate, the lungs to breathe, the legs to move, right? Or how to speak. None of this was taught through the knowledge of the mental body. So then what happens is this. If you can see this diagram, let me come back to the other screen. Okay, great. So what happens now is that the intelligence of the entire human structure, the entire human being, some of that is cut off from our cognitive intelligence, from the intelligence that we're aware of, from our frameworks, from the ways that we think, right? So what happens is there is a schism or a split in our ability to heal. This itself is a form of disintegration, or a form of what we might call dis-ease, right? The lack of awareness of our full anatomy. So in terms of second mind medicine, the healing comes from recognizing the nature of it as disintegration versus integration, and then recognizing the full intelligence of the body, right? Remember, the premise here is that consciousness is primary. When we go back to this diagram, if we're living in the mental body with the idea of the body being primary and that being where everything happens, that being the primary model, then we're living according to that material first paradigm, the matter first paradigm. But what we're doing in going deeper and looking at mind, energy, information, consciousness is we're turning the paradigm inside out. So we're saying that no, there is actually deeper intelligence within our human system that knows how to heal. Now, if you say this casually, that there is intelligence in the human system that knows how to heal, in most medical contexts, it might sound bizarre. I know there are a lot of physicians watching, and I get comments from physicians and neuroscientists in particular who question some of this model and what the underlying thinking and philosophy is. And so it can sound strange based on the material model to say that there is this innate intelligence that knows how to heal, because we don't usually think that way in the materialist paradigm. But of course, the evidence is everywhere, right? The evidence is that the laceration heals on its own, right? The evidence is that the stub toe heals on its own. The cold that we get heals on its own. The majority of ailments, the majority of disintegrations that happens, the body can rebalance. And so what that means is there is an innate intelligence beyond just a lump of meat, right? Beyond just the physical structure, there is some intelligence according to which the body is operating. And so what this framework does is it operationalizes a framework for that intelligence, saying that this intelligence is not just some DNA that the cell has, but intelligence itself, or consciousness itself, is fundamental and diversifying as these different layers. All right. So the importance here is that not just that the body heals itself for these conditions, but there are many conditions that we don't know how to heal based on the knowledge in the mental body, right? Many chronic conditions that we don't know how to heal, many types of cancer that we don't know how to heal. We know how to limit their symptoms. We know how to improve how we feel in many cases, but how do we actually heal them? We don't know that yet, right? And so despite that, we know that this happens. There are many cases in which some cancers go away, right? Chronic conditions or acute conditions that we don't expect to get better can get better, and we don't know how it happens, right? And today when that happens, we have to use words like miracle to say it's a miracle that it happened, right? Well, what does that mean? Basically means that the knowledge of the mechanism by which the healing happened does not reside in the mental body of this society, right? We're covering a lot of things, I know. So what we call a miracle, or something that happened spontaneously, it simply means we're not aware of it, right? Just like somebody who expected to have a lifelong illness, or maybe even to die from a wound on the hand, would say, whoa, that's a miracle. How did that heal? Because it just seems to happen on its own and we don't understand the underlying mechanism. So what we're doing is operationalizing the philosophy that consciousness or intelligence is fundamental, and that there are pathways, there are examples of how we can develop that idea in terms of itself manifesting through these different layers, or diversifying as these different layers. So this is the idea of healing in second mind medicine. Now, the next step, if we then say that healing is integration, that healing is then becoming more aware, of course, healing of the part we talked about, but healing in a broader sense is becoming more aware of all of these layers that we are. And furthermore, that the deepest layer, the core of what we are, is consciousness itself, which has the potential to heal because it is that which appears as all the other layers. Then the question is, how do we facilitate this healing? right? Now, the first one is simple. The first answer is simple, at least to say. It may not be simple to do, but it's simple to say, which is that through introspection and through any other techniques, whatever techniques a person has to do or wishes to do or whatever works for them, they start to become aware of these layers rather than simply, let me shift back to the screen where everybody's here so I can see some of the comments too. All right. And let me just switch away from this other screen too. I can have my screen back. Okay. Natalia, will there be a replay? Yes, this will all be on Second Mind. So all these videos will be here at this website on the videos, okay? All right. What triggers a process? Okay. So we were just saying that how do we do this? And one of the things I said is that, well, one is by becoming aware of these deeper layers. So we start to look at ourselves and we start to recognize through introspection, as we did in the meditation. If you logged on later, please go back to the beginning of this later, and there's a meditation in the beginning. Through introspection, we can start to see, oh, wait a second, there are these different layers to what I am, right? Just like when we look at the physical body, we can say, okay, yeah, there are fingers, and there's a hand, there's a forearm, there's an arm, right? So all of this we can give one word. We can say this is the upper extremity, right? Sometimes we call this, in medicine, this is called the upper extremity. So it's one thing, right? Yeah. But it's also many things. It's also fingers. It's also a hand. It's also a forearm. It's also an upper arm. But it's also more than that. It's fingernails, right? It's your distal phalanx and your middle phalanx and your proximal phalanx. It's all the bones in your hand. It's your carpal bones. It's your radius and your ulna, and so on. We just went from one word, the upper extremity, to 50 words. And you could go beyond 50 words. You could go to 1,000 words to describe the different kinds of the subtle anatomy of this hand, of this arm. The point is that when we talk about the human being, we need to recognize all the aspects of what we are. And so that first step is becoming aware through some practice, whatever works for you, of the different layers. That, okay, I get the physical part, right? We all know what that feels like. And then, oh, okay, so here's this sense of doubt. Okay, here's this question. Wait a second, this doesn't make sense. Oh, I see, this makes sense. So that feeling is the mental body. It is the mental body which says this is confusing, or this is clear, or I'm unsure about this, or okay, wow, this really makes sense. So that's a body, right? What is it that's noticing that? It's some subtler awareness that is noticing that. And if we use our awareness to become aware of just these layers, the physical body and the mental body, then pretty soon, with introspective practice, with reflection, we will start to sensitize our awareness. So it becomes sensitive to that which is just under that. Just like if you're looking at a lake and the lake has a lot of activity on the surface, then you can't see what's going on 10 feet below, right? So if the body is moving and then thoughts are moving and there are waves on the surface of the lake, there are ripples on the surface of the lake, and I'm looking down from above, I can't see 10 feet deep, right? As I start to notice and look at the lake and say, okay, here's a lake. Okay, I see these ripples on top. I see these ripples moving, okay. And now they're moving more, now they're moving less. This is kind of like the mental body. Okay, the more we notice this, the more the identity is not restricted to only this. The very fact that we're recognizing these ripples suggests that there is some aspect of us that is not restricted to these ripples. And these are the deeper bodies, right? So once we recognize that, the outer bodies start to rest. And then what is 10 feet deeper starts to come into view. And this is what's talked about in all the traditions of the world as the energetic body, the energetic structures, right? The details on that are in the post from before. Let me see. This is the post on the 5 bodies from before. I haven't written this out on healing in detail, but I will try to get to it this week, and then I will post that. So the first step there is becoming aware of more of these bodies. Now, one thing that will happen, remember, this is all an answer to how will this help with COVID, right? We're using that as a kind of impetus, or as a kind of impulse, as a kind of query through which we can explore this healing. So as a result of this, as a result of becoming aware of this, we will also start to become aware of the dysfunctions. All right. And after we talk about this point, we will pause until next time, and we will continue with this topic on healing and multi-directional healing. But as a person becomes more aware of these bodies, even just the mental body, even as a person becomes more aware of the mental body, it becomes very clear. The relationship between the mental body and our own well-being becomes very clear, right? What happens is when we just say that, okay, we're a human being, okay, I'm going through my life, I'm taking this next step, but I don't recognize how each of these steps, how are they influencing these bodies? How are they influencing the entire subtlety of what I am? Then without that recognition, it's easy to do things that cause harm, right? Not intentionally, just unintentionally, right? So as we become more aware of the mental body, we will automatically become aware of what are the foods, for example, that influence this mental body, right? What are the foods that influence how this body feels, right? These foods tend to give me a headache. These foods don't. You'll see today, of course, there are so many programs, nutritional programs, food programs that talk about journaling, right? Food journaling, keeping a food diary. And that's exactly this. This is talking about becoming more aware of the physical body and the mental body, because then we start to correlate, hey, this food has this kind of effect on the mind. This food has this kind of effect on the body. If the world, and let me speak about the United States because that's where I practice medicine. If the United States were simply to focus on this, becoming aware of the physical body, becoming aware of the thoughts, of our pattern of thoughts, and the pattern of our emotions, right? What emotions are bubbling up? In what context do they bubble up? How do they feel? What foods are they related to? Probably our health would dramatically improve, right? Because this is all of what is simply called lifestyle, right? We talk about single big words that perhaps don't have enough precision for us to take action on them. So if we just say lifestyle, it often sounds boring. Oh, it's a lifestyle change. Well, no, what's happening here is that we are becoming more aware at a finer level of our own constitution. And as a result of becoming more aware of our constitution, we are noticing the environmental correlations that can act on these different bodies, right? So we're getting more into exactly how this works, into how by becoming aware of, we talked about the physical and the mental body, the same for the energetic body. For the energetic body, it's much more instantaneous, as opposed to with the mental body, it can take some time to pair food and the body, right? In fact, the more we go to the outer layers, the more we go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the physical structure, the longer it takes for the correlations to show up, right? So the correlation that takes the longest is a physical structure, right? I might eat something now, I might change everything I eat now, but for that to show up, for us to recognize that as the physical structure, even biochemically, it takes time, but for us in our own perception, for the physical body to change size, it can take days to weeks to months, right? Whereas in the mind, it's much more quick, right? It's more like minutes to hours that we notice it, right? I eat something different now, minutes to hours, maybe even sooner than that. The energetic body, it's pretty much instantaneous, right? Depending on what we eat, it's not just food. I'm using food as one example, but depending on what we eat, who we're around, what we're listening to, the change is immediate, right? That is experienced almost immediately. Why does this matter? Because As soon as the system becomes sensitized, we will automatically make changes, right? We'll make changes in the environment, in our choices and what we do, and we'll make changes in how we carry ourselves, in how we carry our own awareness. Because the link between well-being and how we're feeling and our choices starts to become more and more clear. All right. Now, we haven't gotten to the crux of it yet, but in terms of COVID-19, it's very clear with COVID-19 that the more comorbidities a person has, the more likely they are to get acutely sick or to get severely sick, right? Most of the people who are getting COVID-19, especially young people, are doing quite well. Most people, including older people that have no comorbid conditions, meaning they don't have advanced hypertension, advanced diabetes, they don't have congestive heart failure, they don't have COPD. Examples like this, for those who don't have a lot of these conditions, they are much more likely to do better, right? So part of this is part of what we're talking about is second mind medicine is to show that a lot of the things that people want to talk about, right? People want to talk about miracles, people want to talk about what are called magic cures or instant healing and all of these things. All of these things are already within our reach through choice, through becoming aware of ourselves and the choices that we make, right? We know this already today. We know this in medicine already today. But the fact is, we don't focus on it, right? Because there's so much attention on the fifth layer of the physical body, we don't focus on all the other aspects that can influence what we are. All right. So let's just pause here. We've gone on for about 45 minutes. We'll pick up next time to continue with what is healing. I want to talk about a couple more points and then talk about multi-directional healing specifically. And then we'll go on from there. Let's do one more brief meditation. So this conversation also is happening at many levels. There's the physical level of our bodies. There's the mental level, the mental body of thoughts, right? The idea of healing as integration, the idea of disease as disintegration, categorizations. That's the mental level of this conversation. There's the energetic body of the conversation, which is what is trying to be translated into words of the mental body, and which is showing up as these expressions and movements of the hand and the lips as the physical body. Deeper than this is the very possibility of communication, the possibility of one speaking to another, of one listening to another, one asking questions. This very me and you-ness, this possibility, is the informational body. And then there is what we are. So are other kinds of healing possible? Of course. We see them in other cultures, and we will talk about that more next time. But first, it's important to lay a foundation to see what healing is about and how the things that sound so mundane, that are so easily glossed over in medicine today, like lifestyle or like nutrition, that these are actually quite powerful and subtle. And if a person wants to see them as powerful or as esoteric, then all that is there. It's simply a matter of how we use our awareness and become more aware of these layers. And through that, making the choices that complement our well-being. So we'll continue this next week. Thank you.